I've had a few things come up the last couple weeks, which made me think there are some parts of my testimony I have not shared very much. I have shared my testimony in this channel, and I'll provide a link up there. Up there. Up there. Anyways, up there in the top, there'll be a link to my testimony that will talk a little bit about how I became a Christian and some of the things that happened. There are a few other things besides that that I would like people to know. That I was not raised in a Christian home. Being a Christian did not come naturally to me. Honestly, when I first became a Christian, it had been a long process that had happened. I mentioned in my other videos, I was raised in an atheist home. I was not a Christian home. My mother had gone to church when she was a child, and she sent me to a couple Sunday schools very briefly, but pretty much I almost never went to church. My dad was an atheist when I was a child growing up, and that was really kind of what I knew, was that there was no such thing as God. I mean, as a kid, I didn't even realize that the baby that was born at Christmas was the same one who died at Easter. There was no connection. They weren't the same people, and it wasn't until I was a teenager, at least, that I finally realized that. I was like, oh, wait a minute, those two are related? The baby died on the cross? What? Part of it, with my dad raising me that way, is he really taught me to be a skeptic, a cynic, to question everything. That if somebody tells you something, you don't just automatically believe it. Where is the evidence? Where is the proof? Show it to me. I think that's part of the reason that I became a history major in school, was because I loved the whole fact-finding. Show me the truth. Show me what's really there. Let me make up my own mind and opinion about things, but I want to see the evidence for what you're saying. That applied in history. It applied in research papers. In fact, if you ever look at my old college papers, I always did footnotes instead of little parentheses, because I always had commentary I added to what was that. I love footnotes. In fact, when I read a book with footnotes, I go through the footnotes in it. Just because I want to see the proof. Prove to me what's true. I did get in trouble occasionally with my science teachers, because I was like, prove what you're saying is true. I don't want to just read this assumption. I want to see how you know what's in this. With history, I had that. With math, when I did geometry, I hated proofs, but I loved them at the same time, because you went through all the evidence for why math works the way it does. That's just been a part of me. When my dad became a Christian when I was 16, my parents had been divorced a year. They divorced when I was 15. And it really threw me for a loop. And after seeing this change in my dad, I was kind of like, you know what? You're just a wacko now, and I'm going to show you that you're a wacko. And so from the time I was about 17 and a half, in the midst of my drinking and other stuff, because I was a studious person, because I loved reading, I loved research, we didn't have the internet, but I set out to try to do my best to absolutely prove that my dad was an idiot. That this Jesus person was a fake and a fraud, that Christians were dumb for believing in this, that there was no historical evidence, and went through this whole thing for over a year, just in my spare time. Oh, hey, I'm at the library, let me go find out how stupid Jesus is. And did everything I could to kind of prove that he was wrong. Well, over the course of that year and a half, and finding everything I could, I came to a conclusion that I was wrong. That Jesus was a real person. That Jesus definitely existed. There was proof outside of the Bible for that. That what it says about his death and resurrection, the evidence held up and proved it. And there really wasn't any other explanation for it. And that then if this guy had been resurrected from the dead, then what's that say about everything else he said and did? And that those records were accurate. And if those records are accurate, what's it say about the rest? And it really kind of sent me into a position where it's like, I can't deny this anymore. That did not make me become a Christian. It still took more after that, because that's the kind of person I am. A few years back, in fact, I actually found this wonderful book that really, in a lot of ways, almost parallels my own journey of discovery, called The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. A great book. He was the same kind of thing. He was an atheist who wanted to prove that it was wrong and ended up proving Christ to himself. So if you've never read this book, I would strongly encourage you to get it. Great book, good read, relatively easy read, but it's also going to go through all the evidences, and like I said, it parallels my own walk. That being said, I still didn't change a lot of the way I thought about some things. And when I went to Bible college, a little college in California, and then married my wife. We had been married for 2 years, I guess. And we were talking one time about science, and I was talking about the millions of years, and she kind of looked at me funny and went, "Oh, wait, what?" Well, after all, science has pretty much proven this. My skepticism hadn't kicked in for once. And she challenged me. Well, I want you to do some research. And her grandfather, wonderful man, actually sent me several books, including a couple very scientifically detailed books that were actually almost over my head a little bit. And I began to dig through those and realized, the whole thing isn't as cut and dried as they like to tell you in schools. And maybe question a whole lot of things and start digging in, doing a lot more research. At that point, the internet was coming online, and so I began to use it. One thing I do want to make clear is there are some people out there who proclaim creation science, and they're definitely out there and making stuff up and coming up with some weird things. You find that with the Flat Earth Society as well. You also find it in people who refuse to acknowledge that there's scientific holes in the whole case for evolution. In fact, a lot of people would be surprised to find 35 to 45% of scientists on the leading edge of research and discovery are actually creationists, not evolutionists. But you don't hear that anywhere. In any case, through this whole time, I then spent about another year and a half researching, going, okay, are these people just hokey whack jobs off their rockers? And begin to learn that many, many of them are not. That there is some incredible evidence out there that the Earth is not millions and billions of years old. And several things that as I looked at them deeper, I went, wow, that's not what they tell you in school. Why not? It really began to change the way I thought a little bit. And again, I'm going to pull out Lee Strobel for you, because this is a wonderful way, that when you start looking, going, okay, aren't all these people who believe in, 6 literal days of creation, aren't they just nuts? Well, when you start looking at it, Lee Strobel, again, as a non-believer in this, as a believer in evolution, started going through the same thing I did. And he actually talks to a number of leading researchers and scientists and other stuff in this, and says, well, wait a minute, what about this? And again, parallel some of the research I did. It's a great intro. There are some fantastic other things out there. Institute of Creation Research is a great organization, ICR.org. But both of those really changed the way I thought. It reinforced to question again a lot of the things that I'm told that may or may not be accurate, whether in the media, whether in science, whether in the classroom, a textbook, or whatever, to always kind of say, where's your information come from? What are you starting at? And then go from there. Both those had a huge impact. This study had a big impact on me becoming Christian, and what kind of Christian I was, and how it affected me. And then this really reinforced my faith and changed the whole way I thought about science. Not that science is bad. Science is good, done right. And how much we oftentimes think of something as fully established science, and only to find out it's not. So those are foundation stones for me. And I'd encourage you, check them out. If you have not done research into whether or not the Bible is true or established or trustworthy or science and things like that, go research. Find out for yourself. Don't believe something because I tell you. Go look it up. It's amazing today how many Christians don't even read their Bible. We are in the most biblically illiterate time that this country has ever been in. I run into people who claim themselves as Christians and they have no clue who Adam and Eve are, who Noah is, or how believing whether their stories are true or not affects all of their faith, because it has a huge impact. People who don't even know who David and Goliath are, and whether the gospel according to Christ is the same thing as the 4 gospels, and so forth. Grab your Bible and read it. And then get into some research and educate yourself. Question, analyze, learn, because it will change how you live. It will also give you a deeper understanding for people who have a different view. One of the reasons that I have such an appreciation for atheists and non-believers is because I was one. I know what that view is like and what it's like to be there and how this changed me. And so I hope to be able to reach across and help people to see the same things and then decide on their own as well. Don't cut people off because they've got a different view. Reach out and talk to them and listen to them and maybe learn something along the way. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you learned a little bit. And again, Lee Strobel, great author, great books.